So,
Yeah, it sounded like there was like feedback or something.
oh, is it better now or?
Yeah, it's better. What's up?
Okay, great. So, why am I not Christian?
Yes.
I would say I did used to be Christian, but then I came to the conclusion that I didn't have any good reason for me to be Christian, so I
Hmm.
stopped being Christian.
Did you look for a good reason to be Christian?
Yes, for like 2, 3 years, I would always ask God to give me a reason. I went to a Christian school, so I was always given the classical arguments of like an evidence of God, but none of it was good evidence, in my opinion.
What kind of arguments did you hear?
A ton of different ones, the like St. Thomas Aquinas arguments. Um, and then I also had like some personal religious experiences that I would cling on to, but I realized it's more likely that instead of God supposedly reaching out to me, I was just something I'd created in my mind to think that way.
Um, okay, so I'm assuming you're agnostic or atheist.
I'm an agnostic atheist, yeah.
Okay, so what do you want? An argument for the existence of God or something?
I mean, if you want to, sure. You asked me why am I not Christian, and
Yeah.
I came wanted to answer.
I mean, if you read through Thomas Aquinas, then I guess we could just go with something that you're familiar with. Um, okay, we'll do motion. Yeah, we'll do motion. So have you heard the argument for motion?
Yeah, but it's been a minute, so I would love a refresher.
Okay. Uh, so the first premise would be that change exists, and by change we mean the reduction of potential to actual.
Sure, change exists.
Okay. Um, but potential cannot actualize itself, so only something already actual can bring it into actuality.
I would disagree with that.
Okay. Why?
We see all the time in systems that like things can just create themselves by like bumping into themselves, or systems like for instance, right? We look out in space
How do you
and we
create
uh,
yourself?
the when two certain chemicals bump into each other, sometimes a chemical reaction that can happen, and
Yeah,
you
so
create a new
that's
chemical.
yeah, so that
That's
means that
change without an actor.
no, you just listed the actors of the two chemicals. So there's something that exists before that's able to bring something else into actuality. All you're saying
Something.
is
Oh,
that
just you're saying
yes,
something in general.
yeah, it's just something in general, some substance. So even with, say, for instance, like quantum fluctuations, for example, where they would say that quantum particles pop in and out of existence for no apparent reason. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It still depends on the quantum field in order for these things to take place.
To
So
some
within,
degree,
yeah, so within the
not
quantum field,
really.
quantum particles have the potential in order to pop in and out of existence. If you were to remove the quantum field, none of these things would be able to take place.
There are subatomic particles that just pop into existence everywhere,
Yes,
not
but
within.
if the field in which they
But
existed were removed, that potential would not be able to be actualized. That's the point. So a
no,
potential
like
doesn't,
subatomic particles pop up everywhere, but regardless of
I don't
fields.
think that you're understanding what I'm saying.
But
So
either way,
even in what you're
this
saying,
idea that
even in
there's
what you're saying, the subatomic particles that pop up everywhere, right? They
mhm.
rely on certain things like the force of gravity being consistent or the, the way in which the universe is. They rely on these things for the actualization of their potential. Now, what causes their actualization, their direct causation is unknown. That has nothing to do with the
Mhm.
argument. It's just that a thing cannot reduce itself from potential to actual because potential is a state of not yet. So like you being non-existent can't bring yourself into existence. You rely on something else to bring you into existence to actualize that potential.
Sure, I
Yeah.
can agree that, or to some degree, I wouldn't say everything because I would say with when you look at the singularity, right? We don't know anything about it
That has nothing to
before
do.
the
I
first
mean,
Planck second.
yeah, it doesn't really matter as to for this argument, it doesn't matter as to how you think the universe started or anything. I don't care
And
what
also,
yeah, I don't care what
you
view
know,
you hold in regards to that.
the net sum of energy in the universe is like zero. So,
That means nothing to me for this
okay,
argument.
cool.
Yeah, so all we're saying so far is that change exists and potential cannot actualize itself. Only something already actual can bring about actuality.
To some degree, but we don't know what the universe would look like if there was nothing in it, right?
That's not what I'm saying, bro. Here, we'll just simplify it to like a piece of wood, or a pot of water. Pot of water has the potential to be hot and a burn, but it can't actualize that potential in itself. It relies on something that's already actual, like fire, to make it actual. That's all that's
You,
being said.
sure, I'll agree with it for now.
Okay. Therefore, whatever changes is actualized by something else. It as follows. This leads to a chain of actualizers, each depending on something else to cause its change in the here and now. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. We can say there's a chain of reactions and actualizations, as you put it, back to the singularity.
Yeah. Okay, cool. An infinite chain of such actualizers is impossible. Without a first
I,
actualizer, nothing could be actualized.
I didn't say it was infinite. I said it leads back to the singularity.
Yeah, so that means that you're recognizing that there's a first actualizer. Without this first actualizer,
Hmm.
nothing can be actualized. Cool. Uh,
And what do we know about this first actualizer?
now we'll get there. So the first actualizer must have no potential, or i.e., is purely actual. It is not caused itself or changed by anything else. That's what being purely actual means.
Why?
Because if change is the reduction from potential to actual, and everything that is changed is actualized by something already actual, this can't go on forever. It must terminate in a first that is not moved by anything or actualized by anything else. So there's no passive potency within this first thing. Therefore, it is purely actual. It is not changed. It is not moved.
But this first thing, let's assume it's the singularity, right? We can assume that the singularity has, or we don't know its cause. That's the best we can say about it, right? We
Uh,
don't know its cause.
that's fine.
So,
What you're saying in regards to the first actualizer, it's purely actual. That's it. It doesn't have potential to be changed. There's nothing external to it that will move it, cause it to be changed.
but it can have internal changes.
I don't know what you mean by internal change. If you're
Like,
saying
as
that like
in
it
this
has
pot of
the
water.
are you saying that
It
it
can,
has the ability to cause change?
no, that it internally, it itself can change.
No,
Why not?
because if it has the ability to be changed, that implies that it has some potential, some passive potency. This singularity, this being, does not have any potential, does not have any passive potency. It is
But the
purely actual.
singularity, this you are a part of the singularity.
I'm not
You
making any
understand?
statements about me. We're just going through a logical argument about whatever this first mover or first actualizer, or this singularity that you're talking about is. That's all we're talking about right now.
Wait, do you know what the singularity is? Because
I
I feel like I'm
do.
talking past you. Okay, so everything that is right now was contained within the singularity at a certain point, right?
Sure.
Um, that is as far back as we can say anything on scientifically.
Cool.
And
We're
this
talking
could be
log.
your first actualizer
That's yeah.
or the
That's
first
that's cool.
thing,
We're talking.
but
Okay.
it changed.
We're talking about so perfect. That goes right into our point. Perfect. But we're talking about a logical argument or a philosophical argument right now.
Sure,
We're
and
just
you
we're
state
using the
why
fact that
does
we
the
see. Okay, we're
why
using the fact
can the
that we
first
see that.
actualizer not change?
Okay. The reason as to why the first actualizer cannot change is because the first actualizer does not have any potential. When
Why not?
we define change as the reduction of potential to actual, or something going from potential to actual. But nothing can reduce itself from potential to actual. Therefore, everything that is changed by something already actual. This can lead to a chain of actualizers, but a chain of such actualizers cannot be infinite. Therefore, it must terminate in a first. This first actualizer cannot have any potential because potential means that it can be moved by something external or actualized by something external to it. But this first one is not moved by anything because otherwise you would just be going on to infinite regress of actualizers. But this first one is not like the rest of the things in the chain. This first one is purely actual.
So you're saying that this first thing has no potential to change because it could be changed. Not that it hasn't been changed, but that it could be changed.
No, it cannot be changed.
Not that it cannot be changed. I'm saying, I mean, it could be. Why not? Why couldn't it be? Because you're simply saying that it
Here,
can't have
can
been
you look
changed.
up? Can you go on your if you have a device? Can you look up what does it mean to be purely actual?
Sure.
I mean,
You're first of all, I'm saying I disagree with the idea of purely actual because you're just ascribing it to it with no logical reasoning. You're just stating this thing.
no, I'm not. I'm literally telling you why it's the case.
With no potential or capacity to change remaining.
Okay, so is it possible for this thing to change?
If it is, I'm saying it isn't. I'm saying we've never observed something purely actual.
Okay, so here,
And we have no evidence for something purely actual.
here. So
And this argument does not
in
lead to that conclusion.
yes, it does. Here, look. In the causal series that we're talking about is called a per se causal series, or an essentially ordered causal series. So I'm going to give you the reason as to why it can't go on infinitely and how it terminates in a
I'm
first
not
purely
saying it does.
hold on, and how it terminates. There's people in the comments that want to know as well, and how it terminates in a
What I'm
purely
saying is,
actual actualizer. Give me a
why
second.
is the idea that the universe is not eternal not also a valid explanation of this instead of some external thing?
You remember
Because
when I told
Quantum
you? Remember when I
that you
told?
want-
Hold on. Remember when I told you I don't care about your view of the universe? You could believe that the universe is eternal. It doesn't change the argument.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. I can explain to you how it doesn't.
Cool. Why,
Okay.
if the universe is eternal, does it need a cause?
We're not talking about the universe having a cause.
Okay, then please explain to me.
Like,
The
just listen. Here.
universe is the
Here.
first thing.
Hey, do you believe
Always
that cool. Universe always been great. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Please get it out your head for the argument. I don't know why everyone, when hearing this argument, always thinks that it has something to do with the universe. It doesn't have anything to do with the beginning of the universe. You could believe the universe is eternal. You could believe the universe started. It doesn't matter.
When we talk about a causal chain, right?
What kind of causal chain am I talking about?
The one that you think is infinite that has to terminate in an purely actualizer, right?
Please, here. Can
Is
you?
that not what you're saying?
No, I don't think that this thing is infinite. I'm saying that it can't be
Not
infinite.
That
Yes.
it's finite and it ends at the pure actuality, right?
Okay. Just listen for a second. Just take a second, please, and
I've
listen.
been listening.
Okay.
And I said what you said.
Just don't talk. Just listen. Okay. So, in the causal series that we are talking about, it is called a per se causal series. Now, specifically in this causal series, it means that everything in the causal chain depends immediately right now for its existence in the here and now. So, in a per se causal series, each member receives its causal power here and now from the member before it. That's premise one. If there is no first member with causal power in itself, then no member in the series has causal power. For example, if I took my phone and I plugged it into an extension cord, and that extension cord is not plugged into the wall, will my phone be charged?
No,
What if I plug in another extension cord that's not plugged into the wall? Will it be charged?
probably a little, technically, but generally no.
What if I do that for infinitely? Like I just plug extension cord after extension cord after extension cord and never plugged into the wall or any power source, will my phone ever be charged?
No, but
Okay. So
we don't live in an infinite
so
universe.
that's fine. That's fine. So what
So
I'm
why
saying,
believe
hold
in
on,
Trinity?
hold on. So what I'm saying, this is an analogy of the type of causal series or causal chain that we're talking about. So you understand that if I see that my phone is charged and it's plugged into an extension cord, that extension cord can't go on infinitely. It has to be plugged into something that's different, that has power in itself, that doesn't receive its power from anything before it, but
Mhm.
is power in itself.
Well, let's
Okay, hold
say no,
on,
no, no,
hold
no. I
on.
don't agree with that. Actually, I don't agree with that.
Okay,
Let's
well, oh
say
no.
there is a extension cord that's 14 billion miles long, and that's all you can see. You can't see anything past that. But your phone is getting charged. What do we think's beyond that extension cord?
A power source.
What kind of power source? Is there any way to know anything about that power source?
Yes.
How?
If the extension cord does not have the potential or it does not have the ability, the innate ability in itself to cause or to give power, then it must be receiving said power from something else.
Mm-hmm.
This something
So
else would not be another extension cord that does not
I
have
never
the
said it was
ability.
another extension cord.
Hold on.
I
This
claimed I don't know.
listen. I'm
Is I
asking
don't
you,
know a
I'm
bad
asking you to
solution?
here. No. Look, right now we're running through a logical argument. Okay? So if the premises are true, then the conclusion would just follow. Okay? That's it. I'm not asking for what you've seen empirically, what
Oh,
you've
and I'm
experienced.
disproving your second premise.
What's the premise? If there's no
The
if it
premise
hmm?
is that everything has potentiality and causation, right? That's what you said.
That's not
Something along those
that's not what I said.
lines. Second. Pretty sure that is.
That's not what I said.
Not in those words. Whatever is moved by another.
Yeah, what does move mean?
It's generally changed, right?
So whatever is changed or whatever goes from potential to actual is brought into actuality by something that's already actual. I'm trying to make it as simple as I possibly can.
Cool. So for a lot of things we've observed, this is true, right?
Is there anything that you've observed that where
The
this isn't true?
singularity.
Does the singularity depend on something on things like I don't know, the force of gravity, the speed of light, things like that?
There is one correct answer to that question. It is I don't know.
Okay. So here, let's just say right now, you're just putting in the place of this purely actual actualizer, the singularity. Because
No?
you're understanding
I'm
that in the
saying
person, hold
our
on.
understanding ends in the first Planck second. It ends there. We can't say anything else before that.
Yes, you can reason. You can literally reason. So, in a per se causal series, you understand that
But we don't
this,
know. Really.
do you,
We don't know. That's what we have to say.
I
We
don't
don't
think
know.
that I don't think that you're listening to anything that's being said.
You know, you're saying that because everything we've observed is this way, that everything has to be this way. That does not logically follow.
That's not what I'm saying.
Then what are you saying?
So I'm saying, if you just listen, then I think that you would be able to get it. If you just listen.
So you are saying everything that we've observed that is moved was moved by another, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying. You agreed.
Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this thing that we haven't observed, we cannot assume that about that thing.
Bro, if you're saying that the universe here's the thing. Did the singularity at some point change?
Yeah.
Okay. Change is the actualization of a potential. Potential cannot actualize itself. It is acted upon by something that's already actual. If the singularity, hold on, if the singularity changes, it is not this purely actual actualizer.
Why not? Why cannot something change itself?
Because going from potential It's not like a non-existent. So what we mean by potential, like maybe this is where it's getting mixed up. Potential is just what something could become, even if it's not like that right now. It's the can be part of a change. So if you're saying that, like, for example, Elijah can exist or your child can exist, that child exists in a state of potential. That child cannot now bring itself into actuality because in order to actualize that potential, you would have to already be actual. It's a contradiction. You can't be potential and actual at the same time in the same respect.
So something cannot have potential and actually exist.
You cannot be potential and actual at the same time in the same respect.
Okay. So let's say, a balloon is exploding. That air has the potential to be outside of that balloon and is going to be soon. Did something bring that into actuality?
The
Or did it
balloon
just follow
exploding.
the natural progression of what is going to happen? It followed natural processes. Things
I
we
don't
don't
think that
have a
you're,
why for.
bro. I'm not sitting here. I'm not even bringing in the potential for. I mean the principle of sufficient reason into this. I'm not saying, hey, you need to understand why these things happen. I'm saying,
I didn't say that either.
you said what?
I didn't say that either. But the thing is you're saying there's a system or whatever, right? To break it into like more thermodynamic terms, there's a system. This system cannot change without any outside influence, right? That's what you're saying.
Bro, I'm in the very simplistic form. Change exists. And what we mean by change is the reduction from potential to actual. Anything that changes goes from what it could be to what it actually is. Now, because it's a contradiction to exist as potential and actual at the same time in the same respect, everything that changes or goes from potential to actual must be acted upon by something that is already actual. That's it. That's all that's being said. If it goes from potential to actual, something already actual actualizes it. That's it.
Okay.
If that's a
Doesn't contradict
system,
anything I've said.
if that's a system, if that's a field, if it does not
Does not.
matter.
But first of all, you're saying actual thing. You're saying this actual thing, the singularity, right? The first thing we can observe cannot have potential. Why? Why can actual things not have potential?
Actual things can have potential. Like you're an actual thing,
Cool.
right? Okay,
Great.
you're an
So,
actual. Hold on.
well, then why do you assume that there is a thing that does not have potential?
Because logically, when we're talking about the causal series that we're talking about, the reason as to why we see change happening now cannot go on infinitely with things that have the potential to exist and not exist, that can change. The thing that it terminates in is what is known as purely actual. Otherwise, this thing would depend on something else for its actualization. So if you're saying that it cannot go on infinitely, it ends in a first, you're saying that it ends in something that is not actualized by anything that's already actual, but is purely actual, or it is actuality itself. That's just what you're saying if you agree that it can't go on infinitely.
So the reason we know it can't go on infinitely is because time is finite, basically, right? There is no
No.
before the beginning of the universe. What, you
Bro,
can't talk about
that
reality?
does not matter for the argument.
Reality doesn't matter.
Oh my God. Bro, if you believe that the universe is eternal, if you believe that the universe had a
None.
beginning, if you believe that that time had a beginning, I don't care. It does not matter. Please lock
So I'm
in,
trying
bro.
to take
Lock
your
in.
argument and apply it to reality. That is a bad thing for you?
We're literally looking at reality. We're seeing change exist. We're giving an account of change. Specifically the act potency distinction, right? and we're just going where this logically follows.
Have you ever observed a being of entire actuality?
You don't have to.
Why? Why not? You can just assume this thing exists.
No, we're literally giving a logical argument to show that this thing exists.
No, you're giving a logical argument that concludes with an assumption. You're just saying there can't be an infinite causal thing. So the first thing can't have been caused.
What's the argument that it can't? What's the argument? Wait. Hold on.
Did you just say
that there
giving a logical argument
that can change
leads to an assumption? Is that what you said?
Yeah. He started with a logical argument, made it to a point, and then deviated and just made a random assumption.
Wait, when did he deviate? What was the deviation?
When he said the first thing has to be total actuality.
And you just don't think that follows from the premises?
No, not at all.
How does it not follow?
Because when we look at reality, we don't know. The correct answer is I don't know.
Okay, you see how I asked you how it doesn't follow from the premises, and then you didn't mention any of the premises?
So the first premise is everything changes, right?
No, incorrect.
Sorry. The second one
not
is
at all.
Whenever
No,
something
why are you
is
moving
changed,
on?
it's changed
What
by
do you mean the
something
second one? I just said no.
Well, he's not listening.
He
He's
just
not
said
listening.
patently false. I said no. He said okay, cool. Premise 2. No.
I literally didn't. You're just lying on my name, but okay.
What was premise 1?
Premise 1 is that change exists.
Okay, go on.
Premise 2 is that whatever is moved by another.
Okay. And what does motion mean there? Or move?
As defined by the host, it's moving from potential to actual.
Okay.
Which are interesting words, but so premise 2, whatever is moved by another. And I believe you said premise 3 is there cannot be an infinite series of.
I ain't just go there. No. So
is that not premise 3?
No.
Then that's a logical conclusion of the argument outside of the actuality. But okay.
What are you talking about?
Is infinity not like a logical concept?
Bro.
Oh my days, bro.
Premise 1, change exists, and we define what we mean by change. Premise 2, whatever is moved by another. Premise, and then that leads to this conclusion. Therefore, whatever changes is actualized by something else, because you can't a thing that's in potential can't actualize itself. Then it goes to this leads to a chain of actualizers, each depending on something else to cause its change in the here and now. You agreed. Then what we're saying is that an infinite chain of such actualizers, this is our proposition, an infinite chain of such actualizers is impossible because without a first actualizer, nothing could be actualized. But things are actualized. Change does occur. So the chain must terminate in a first actualizer. This first actualizer must not have any potential, or it's purely actual, and it's not itself caused or changed by anything else. A being of pure actuality is what we mean by God.
At first, it was not caused or changed by anything else. That doesn't follow that it cannot ever be caused or changed by anything else.
Oh my goodness.
Just saying.
Okay, so if you have an admixture of potential and actuality, that potential is then actualized by something that's already actual. This chain cannot go on infinitely.
Potential does not have to be actualized. You understand that, right?
Okay, I can't have.
Do you not?
There's somebody else that. There's somebody else that wants to take on the argument.
Okay, so I can tell you why I'm not a Christian, but also his point is perfectly sound. Potential doesn't have to be actualized.
That's not the claim.
No one said potential has to be actual.
Yeah. So the first actualizer could have unactualized potential.
No. What do we mean when we say first actualizer?
Yeah, so what you guys are saying, it's the first thing, the pure act that actualizes.
Yeah, pure act. So do you know what we're negating in that? Hold on.
Doesn't have to be the case.
Hold on. Do you know what we're negating? Do you know what we're negating when we say that something is pure act?
You're just saying that it has any potential, but you haven't explained why that's the case. You need to explain why it's only pure act and it has no potential.
Did you hear the argument?
Yeah, it didn't follow. That's the whole point. Potential doesn't have to be actualized.
How is that relevant?
Because what you're saying is the first actualizer actualizes all of the potential, but has no potential itself because it's not actualized by anything. But it can still have potential and not be actualized by anything.
No, so
His point
if
completely stands. You just won't acknowledge it.
you said what?
His point completely stands. You're just not acknowledging it. Just
No.
because it's not actualized by anything else doesn't mean it has no potential. Because it can have potential that's never actualized by anything else.
You're talking really fast, but yeah. So if you have an admixture of potential and actuality, right? One, that means that you have the ability to be changed, or you have potential. So in regards to the per se causal series that's being talked about, right? This leads to a thing that is purely actual, or
No, it
pure-
doesn't, because you can have potential that's not necessarily actualized.
No, if that's the case, then there is for that potential. Not saying that it's necessary that potential is going to be actualized, but if that is the case, there is something that would have to be external that would be able to actualize that potential. It's just a possibility of
But it
what it
doesn't
could.
have to be.
No, I'm not saying that it's necessary that it has to be, but the fact that it's potential implies that it could be.
Yep.
So if it means that it could be, that means that there's an actualizer that is able to actualize that potential that is not that thing itself.
Yeah.
So
You know
that
what
means-
reverse causation is?
Okay, so then what that means is that this thing that you're talking about is not the first actual the unactualized
You know what
actualizer.
reverse causation is?
That doesn't matter.
It does matter, because if you have reverse causation, this isn't a problem. You could have the potency come after the actualization.
The potency come after the
Yeah, the potential
actualization.
would come after the actualization. So this is called reverse causation in quantum physics. You can have the cause come after the effect, and then
That's
it works
not-
out perfectly fine.
Okay, in
You're
regards,
assuming
yeah,
that it
in
has to
regards to
linearly you're assuming it has to go
No,
back
no.
in one direction, but it can go back or forward.
no. We're not talking, bro. First of all, we're not talking about time, and this is why people always just get mixed up.
Okay, sure.
not-
You're assuming it has to go in one direction, but it can go in either direction.
No. It doesn't. It really doesn't matter. Your view on time, on reverse causation or whatever, it literally does not matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. So the only thing that's being said is that if the account of change stands, that okay, change is the actualization of potential, and what we mean when things are changed, that means that they're brought into actuality by something that's already actual. We're just saying that this leads to a chain of actualizers that can't go on forever.
It doesn't have to go on forever. It can bounce backwards and forwards.
Okay. So if you're saying that it can bounce backwards and forwards, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I don't even know what that means.
Sure. So reverse causation means that the effect can come after. The cause can come after the effect. So
What does that
basically,
even mean? How is it the cause if it's after the effect?
because it's quantum physics, I don't know how to explain the quantum mechanics to you. World's
That
weird.
doesn't make
Quantum physics.
how is it the cause if the effect
If
already
you learn
happened?
quantum physics, you could tell me, man.
You
It's just
obviously know about it. Tell me.
It's just a property of quantum mechanics.
Okay,
Like I can't tell you the math of it.
Either
You can
way,
look into
so
it.
you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the math behind it.
Okay.
If you want to look
So
into it.
here's the thing. Even in quantum mechanics, like say for instance, if this was okay, like if I were to grant this to you, even in quantum mechanics, we're saying that the you said what?
What do you mean granted to you? It's reality. I mean, I guess if you want to grant reality to me, sure.
Okay. So
Okay.
and even in the quantum realm, the reason why this has nothing to do with the argument as well is that all we're saying is that the things that happen within the quantum realm depend on the quantum realm. So there's a lot of things that potentially can happen within the quantum realm, but it relies on the quantum realm for these potentials to be able to be actualized. So whatever thing happens within the quantum realm does not matter for the argument, because it still
But what is there
depends
to
on
say
something
that
to
all
bring that
potential
thing into
exists?
actuality.
To say that all potential exists, it has to exist in some quantum field.
You said what?
For any potential to exist at all, it has to exist in a quantum field. There's never a point where there is no quantum field.
Okay, if bro, that's fine. Oh my God, I don't understand why you guys can't follow a simple argument. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. So here, if we're giving the proposition that this specific chain of actualizers cannot go on infinitely, but it must terminate in a first, and we're giving an argument for such, what is your defeater to the argument?
Sure, when you say first there, it doesn't necessarily follow that it goes in one direction.
We're not talking about time. We're talking about dependency, hierarchy.
Well, first is a reference to time. I hope you know that.
No, it's talking about hierarchy. So like, for example, if I have a chain that's holding up a chandelier, we're not talking about time in a sense when I'm talking about the first chain, but I'm talking about the one that sits the highest.
So who determines if that's the first? Why can't it
Oh,
be the last?
I almost cussed. You almost got me out. You almost got me out of character. So did I just sit here and show you that first can imply something that's talking about a hierarchy?
No, because when you said it's first, that doesn't follow just because it's at the top of the chain. It could be last.
Are you an idiot?
Sure, if you take a chain and you point to the top of a chandelier, it doesn't necessarily imply that's the first one. It could be the last one.
Okay.
The direction is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So
Okay, cool.
So when we're talking about first, in that sense, we're talking about a hierarchy, not going back in time, not talking about place, just
First is
hierarchy.
a time in reference to time. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what definition of first you're using that isn't a reference to time. If you would like to give it to me, go ahead. But I can't
I
imagine.
literally just did.
No, you didn't. The implication of a chain being the highest in a link doesn't imply it's first.
That's the bro. When you're looking at the link, right? This chain that's holding up the chandelier, right? Let's say if it's 5, okay? 5 chains that hold up the chandelier. The thing that's holding it up on the ceiling, you say that, oh, this is the first link that's holding up the second, that's
No, I
holding
think
up
it's
the
the
third.
last one because you start from the chandelier and then go to the ceiling.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
It really doesn't matter, whichever one. So you're just talking about the one that is highest.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool. So when you're talking
Okay.
about the highest, like actuality, is that what you're talking about now?
In a hierarchical series where everything depends on this thing.
Okay. You're gonna make a point there because we've gotten rid of the first thing. So now you're just saying everything depends on something. I agree.
No, everything depends on the highest member.
What do you mean the highest member?
Okay. If I'm Sophia, we'll try it out. Let's see. If I'm the first person in a line, right? The existence of the line depends on me and where I started.
Again, when you're saying first, you're making an implication about time.
I don't know.
Give me your
no.
definition of time, or we could look it up together. Should we do that?
It doesn't matter about time. I don't care what you think about time. It doesn't matter.
Or we could look it up together.
I don't care about your nothing about time. It doesn't matter.
You said first in the line thing.
Here. This is what we're talking about when we talk about first. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This definition right here. Foremost in position, rank, or importance. So when I'm talking about first, I'm talking about foremost in position, rank, or importance.
Okay, so let's go through all of those.
Am I talking about time in its definition?
We'll go through all of those.
Is it talking about time in its definition?
Dude, we'll go through that and see if it makes sense.
I just need a yes or no before we go. Is it talking about time in its definition?
Yeah, in that definition, it's not. But it
okay, then shut up. Then shut up.
But it doesn't make sense.
Then
when
shut.
To actuality.
What? How doesn't it make sense if we're talking about a per se causal series? Hold on. What kind of causal series are we talking about?
Sure. Not position, right?
Yes.
You're talking about position in a causal series?
Yeah. What kind of causal series are we talking about?
You think it's space.
What kind of causal series are we talking about?
I was assuming you're talking about a system.
Why would you assume that if that's not what I said? What kind of causal series are we talking about?
Talking about cause and effect, you're talking about a system.
Bro, no. First of all, and I said this numerous times, and if you were actually listening to the conversation I was having with the last guest, you wouldn't be up here looking ridiculous. You would be able to answer a question like, what kind of causal series am I talking about?
Well, I wanted to go through all of those in the definition of first, but you didn't want to, so.
So do you want to know what kind of causal series I'm talking about?
Sure, you can go ahead and give it.
Oh, it's called a hierarchical causal series.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the first in a hierarchical causal series, this first is going to be something that is purely actual. We're not talking about time. I don't care what you think about time.
Okay, so the issue there is you're just determining any random point in the series to be the most important.
No, what?
Yeah.
What
so
are
if
you talking about?
Say it in that way,
what are you?
You could say sure.
What's a hierarchical? Hold on. What's a hierarchical causal series?
It's where you say one thing is more important or ranks more important than the things below it.
No, it just means that everything that's below it depends on that thing in the here and now.
Sure, but you're just choosing an arbitrary thing to say is
That's not an
dependent.
arbitrary thing to say. This is something that's very prevalent in philosophy.
Sure, I can give you the
You
example.
don't have to
right?
give me, oh, you're going to grant me reality? You don't
No,
got to
I'm
give
not
me
saying that.
anything. This is just
I'm
what it
telling you why
is.
this. Sure, I'm saying why this doesn't really necessarily follow. So
No,
with your
it
example of the
necessarily
lie-
follows. These are the terms that we're using. Use the definitions that we're using.
Okay, I'll explain it. So when you're talking about the things,
No. I want you to stay in the terms and in the realm of the argument. We're talking about a
Sure, I was
hierarchical
about to get
causal
back to your
series.
line thing.
I gave you the definition. What's the definition of a hierarchical causal series again?
You said that everything relies on the first thing or the most important thing.
No. It depends on the thing previous to it in the here and now. For example, the chain that's holding up the chandelier, it directly depends on the chain right above it in the here and now.
And they
This
all rely on the
thing,
first thing.
this thing can't go on forever. That's why it depends on the first thing, because it can't go on infinitely. Therefore, it terminates in something that's the first.
Sure.
That's
So I
not
can go
held
over
up
it
by
again.
anything previous to it.
Sure, we can go over it again. When you're talking about, we can go over the chandelier or the line thing. The issue here is that you're choosing a random point to decide it's the most important. So for the chandelier, you can say it's the top like chain, but as you know, it's like it's like you're the what's the saying? Weakest chain in the link or whatever. You can basically just choose any link in that chain and then just say that's the most important, and all things depend on that link.
Hey, so I want you to say that again, because you're just telling me that you just don't follow anything that
Sure.
I'm saying
So
without telling me that you're not following
yeah, so
anything
your
that I'm saying.
hierarchy can, yeah, the most important thing can be determined by anyone. It doesn't necessarily follow that it has to be the first thing. You can choose any chain in that link.
You're just dumb.
So you're not going to respond to that?
I just did. You're an idiot.
Cool. So now who's doing the fallacies?
No one's doing a fallacy. I'm stating a fact. You're an idiot.
You sound really emotional right now.
No, I'm not emotional. I'm literally just stating reality. Remember you said you was going to grant me reality? This is
No, I was
reality.
laughing at you
You're an
granting
idiot.
me quantum mechanics.
No one's talking about quantum mechanics. No one's talking about anything like that. You're just up here saying a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with an argument. You're an idiot.
Sure. So what I'm talking about is when you say that the most important thing or the thing at the top of the hierarchy is the first cause, you don't need to say that's the most important thing.
No, we're
You can
just
say the
saying
most
that
important thing.
this is where the per se causal series terminates. If it can't go on infinitely, it must terminate in the first.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't need to terminate at all.
So then it could go on infinitely.
It doesn't necessarily follow that it goes on infinitely either.
So it doesn't go on infinite and it's not finite.
Yeah, so I can explain it. So when you're referring to infinite, you're referring to a concept, right? But you don't
Wait,
want me to explain it?
no, are you saying that it is infinite and not infinite?
Sure. So when you're referring
Sure?
to infinite, I'm about to explain it. I'm not really ready to explain it.
Damn. Please, am I wilding?
So when we're referring to concepts such as infinite, to say that there is a beginning to infinity doesn't really make sense at all, right? Do we agree on that?
No, you just said that this thing can go on infinitely and not infinitely.
Sure. So I can explain it again.
You're going to explain this contradiction?
I'm going to explain it again because you're not listening.
Explain
When
the
we refer
contradiction.
to
Go ahead.
concepts, sure. When we refer to concepts such as infinity, does it really make sense to say that infinity has a beginning or end?
No, it's infinite.
Okay, great. But can we also agree that something can exist for all of something else? So let's say time exists for all of time.
Time exists for all of time.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Okay. Do you know what time is?
Depends on the view, but we're not talking about time. I want you to
Okay.
tell me how
Can we
this.
say that a ruler
I want you to
exists for
tell
all
me.
of the space a
I
ruler
want you to
takes up?
tell me how a per se causal series is both infinite and not infinite.
Sure. So can we agree that a ruler takes up all the space the ruler takes up?
Bro, just explain to me how in a per se causal series, it is both infinite and not infinite at the same
So what
time in the
I'm
same
saying is
respect.
it's uncaused but finite.
You're saying it's uncaused but finite.
Yeah.
No one's talking anything about that. What's a per se causal series again?
I don't know how you're defining it.
How I'm defining it? Look it
Yeah,
up.
because you're using. Sure. I can also look it up if that's what you want. I can do
Go
that.
ahead, look it up.
Per se causal series. A sequence of cause action. I'm not gonna use it overrule. In the per se.
Did you
and per-
forget how to read?
No, it's because I was loading the page. The metaphysics of per se and per accidens. What the hell is accidens?
So you're just up here just
It's also
not
wrong.
knowing what you're talking about, bro.
Yeah, but you didn't refer to.
It's
I have no
okay,
clue
bro.
what-
It's all right. It's all right. Just say, hey,
Cool.
Elijah,
So-
I don't know what I'm talking about. Can you
Atheist
please
causal
teach me, Father?
series. Father produces son, who produces son, who produces son, and so on and so back. Per se, the mind mental agent moves his hand to move the stick to move the stone.
Mm-hmm. So what does that mean?
It just means one thing comes after another.
That's in a per accidents causal series.
The mind mental agent moves his hand to move the stick to move the stone.
Yeah, so that's pointing out that everything in the series is dependent on the thing directly prior to it. If the hand stops moving, the stick stops moving. If the stick stops moving, the stone stops moving. Everything is happening in the here and now.
You think everything happens all at once?
We're talking about change exists right now.
But you just said everything is happening in the here and now.
In the causal series that you just gave, where the stick is moving the stone and the hand is moving the stick and a hand is moved by the arm, all of that is happening right now.
Okay, when you say right now, they don't all happen at the exact same moment. You understand that, right?
You're an idiot.
Do you think you could have faster than light communication?
Hey, bro,
if you-
in all honesty, I think you
Sure.
should just read.
Do you think you can have faster than light communication if you move like a laser across the moon?
Do you think that, like, if I smacked you right now, that it would change anything about the things that you bring forth?
So just right now, whatever you're referring to, things don't happen right at the same time. It takes time for things to like occur.
Bro, in the moment, and maybe somebody with a little bit of a better temper than me right now should come up and try to help you understand. In the moment that you're talking about, where the stick is being pushed and is moving the stone and the hand is moving the stick, all of that is happening simultaneously.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Do you think you can have faster than light communication by moving a laser across the surface of the moon?
What does that has nothing to do with anything.
Because
It has
there's a
nothing
limit
to do
how
with
fast things can move.
anything, bro.
Because there's a limit to how fast things can move. Things can't happen
Bro,
instantaneously.
at the moment that I smack you, you are smacked. It doesn't I smack you and then you're smacked. There's no
You know there's a
time
limit to how
in
fast
between
things can
that.
move, right?
I smack you, you're smacked. That
Okay,
there's
so when you
there's
refer
no
to
time
multiple
in between
things-
that. Both things are true.
Sure.
I
When you
left my
refer to multiple-
handprint on your face.
Sure. Yes, I
And
get your
yes,
emotional right now.
okay.
I get it. You're
No,
emotional.
I'm saying
I
I'm
get it.
literally
It's
I'm
okay.
literally showing you how all these things happen
I get that you're
simultaneously.
emotional. It's fine.
It
You
doesn't
can calm
one
down.
happens first and then the next comes. There's
Sure.
things that
When you
happen
refer to
simultaneously.
multiple things moving, they don't happen instantaneously. It takes time for things to move. You understand that?
Okay, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something real quick.
Exactly.
This cable that's in my hand, right? If I start moving my hand, the cable starts moving. If my
Did it
hand
happen
is
at the
not
exact
moving,
same moment, just to be clear,
if my hand is
that
not
cable is
moving,
moving at the exact moment your hand
can you
starts to
answer? Can you let me finish talking?
move. Okay, can you answer my question or?
Can you let me finish talking?
Okay,
You
so you're not gonna
interrupted
answer
me.
that. I got it.
You interrupted me.
Because the point doesn't. Your point that you're trying to make.
You don't
it
know
doesn't
what the
work.
point I'm trying to make.
You're
You
trying to
don't know
say
it
that
'cause
the
you
cable moves
interrupted
the
me,
instant
right?
your hand moves, and it does not.
You don't know it because you interrupted me.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't. You don't even know what I'm saying, dude.
All right,
Chill
go
out.
ahead. Let's see.
Chill
Surprise
out.
me. Surprise
Let
me.
me ask you a question.
Surprise me. Go ahead.
Or if I were to get something, let me get something more solid. Here.
It's still not gonna work. You
I'll
think
get
you
a
can have
pencil.
faster like
Here.
communication by
No,
moving?
no, just calm down, bro. If I stop
To be
moving my
clear, the
wrist
host
or
was saying
my
he was gonna
hand,
smack me.
can
so
you
if
can
anyone
you
needs to
calm
calm
down?
down.
Can you calm down?
Again, if anyone needs to calm
Can
down.
you calm down?
Again, if anyone needs to calm down, it's the host.
Why you got
He's
my
not even
dick in your
talking.
mouth?
Man. Yeah. So if my hand stops moving, will the pencil stop moving?
Not at the moment your hand stops moving.
Oh my days.
Oh my days.
Oh, how
I guess
about
you guys
this?
just solved
All right,
faster
cool.
communication.
He's an
Right?
idiot.
You
If
guys
I
just solved faster communication.
if I hang a chain or I lift up a chain.
It will not stop moving the
No,
instant you stop
bro,
moving.
be quiet and just
It
listen to what I'm
doesn't.
asking.
Physics just doesn't agree with you guys.
Be quiet and listen
Oh
to what
my
I'm gonna ask
God,
you.
Physics.
Be quiet.
It just doesn't
Okay.
agree with you guys. You guys should write. Like,
You don't know.
guys
You don't
should-
even know what I'm
You
asking
guys should
you.
publish a paper how you solve fast and light communication.
You don't even know what I'm asking you. So just
I
be
think you guys should
quiet.
write a paper.
Look, if in the analogy of a ceiling fan being held up by a chain that's being held up by
It
another
would
chain,
not stop moving the instant that the fan.
can you
stops
be
moving.
quiet and let me finish my question?
You're wrong. It's not how motion works.
Can you gonna let me talk now?
You should write a paper on this. Please, go ahead.
There's been papers.
Well, I'm talking to you right now. I'm not writing a
Go
paper.
ahead.
Okay, can you let me finish talking now?
I'm waiting.
Okay, cool. So in this case, in the case where a ceiling fan is being held up by a chain that's being held up by another chain, is that all happening simultaneously? Or does the first chain hold up the second chain, and then after that, the second chain holds up the ceiling fan?
You're not talking about motion anymore.
Yes, we are. We're talking about the actualization of potential. That is
None
what
of those things
motion
are
is being
potential, they're
defined
all
as.
actual.
I'm sorry, what is motion being defined as?
There was no motion in the example you gave with the chains.
What define motion?
You said the actualization of potential, but there was no potential in that example you just gave.
Yeah.
Does
Yes,
it-
there was. There's the potential for the ceiling fan to being held up is being actualized by the chain which is holding it up. And that chain, the chain's potential to hold up the ceiling fan is itself being actualized by the chain above it. And
What
so
change
on
is
and so
occurring
forth.
there?
Huh?
What change is occurring there?
the actualization of the potential for like the fan to be held up 6 feet in the air is being actualized by the chain. Now the chain,
There's no
the
potential
chain.
there. It's all
Hold on.
actual.
No, that
There is an actualization of
Of
its
potential.
impotency, which means it's being actualized.
But in actuality, the chain is 6 feet in the air.
Due to the chain above it.
Exactly.
Which means that the chain above it is actualizing the chain below it.
No, because there's no change from actual to potential. They're all actually 6 feet in the air
Oh
at that
my
moment.
gosh, bro.
can I drop a
What does it mean to be in potency?
Potency can't be described with positive ontological properties. So I'd have zero clue how you guys are going to describe it.
Okay,
but you would
being
say
in
something that's not
potency means
actual.
that you're being acted upon by an external agent. Okay, so is the chain below it being acted upon by the chain above it?
I mean, not if it's not in motion, no.
Oh my god. Okay, so then hold on. If it's not being acted upon without the chain above it, that since it's not being acted upon, if we remove the chain above it, nothing will happen to the chain below.
But then motion is occurring, change is occurring.
Can you answer the question?
But you just gave a different example.
No, because I'm showing you that it is clearly being acted upon. If without it, you get a different result.
But the example you gave, the first example, there was no change. There was no motion.
bro? All right,
The-
here,
bro,
hold on,
yes,
wait,
there
wait.
was. There was
Bro,
an actualization of the potential in the
Yes.
chain to be held up.
Yeah, so what we're saying is that the chain has the potential to sit 6 feet above the ground or has the potential to hold up a fan. That's being actualized right now. So it went from potentially holding up a fan to actually holding up a fan. This chain changed, right? And now that actualization of potential is being actualized by the chain above it.
So you think things existing, simply existing, means they still have potential?
What?
The chain
Yes,
simply...
if something exists, right? Like you exist right now, you have the potential to not exist.
Great. So all things have a potential to not exist, right?
Not
No,
all
not all
things.
things.
Okay. So give me an example of something that doesn't have the potential to not exist.
That's irrelevant. We're just saying that we're not making that claim.
Oh, because you know what happens if you say that. What happens to your God then? You'd have to admit he has a potential.
Well,
to
then
not
I just
exist.
don't accept the principle that all things
I
have
know.
potential. So what?
I would just disagree with you. I have no reason to believe that God doesn't have the potential to not exist. Why would God not have that potential?
Because, well, I could
Because
explain.
God, by the definition we're giving of God here, is purely actualizer.
Why should I believe that fits the description of God?
We're just giving the definition of our term.
And I'm asking you, why should I believe?
It's like saying, "Oh, I
that fits the
believe a
description of
human
God?
doesn't have. I don't believe humans have bodies."
Sure. Why should I believe you that fits the description of God?
We're saying
Dude,
that
you can
when
just,
we
you can
say
give
God,
whatever
that's what we
definition you
mean.
want. When we say God, that's what we mean.
All right, why should I believe you that describes God?
Why should you believe me?
It's like saying, "Why should I believe the word yellow describes this color?"
You don't have to believe that.
That's what I'm saying. It's just a definition, dude.
All right, so
Like,
you're just saying you're going to
This dude's
define
an
God as actuality.
This dude's an idiot too.
I'm gonna define God as the purely actualizer. Yes.
Okay. Cool. I mean, it really doesn't mean anything because you could just define God any way you want if that's how we're playing this.
All right. He must be getting a phone call.
Can you guys hear me or no?
Well, now you didn't say anything that whole time.
I got a call, and then
Uh,
like I came back and I said something. Nobody responded, so I was like, okay, I don't think I gave him. But if he disagrees with that notion of God, why didn't we just start there? Like he could grant the conclusion and just say that's not God if he doesn't think that's what God is.
Yeah, I mean he could have, but he's just people get too sidetracked when they hear motion. They think pop locking and just movement, physical movement.
That's how I like to explain it. I just say like when I walk down the street, that's what motion is. Get all that potential actual nonsense.
But for people in the chat that maybe like couldn't understand, I apologize for getting rowdy. I know that you guys don't like that side of me, right? But I hate talking to like just people who just purposely disingenuous, right? Like if he's being sincere, then obviously it never gets there.
And by the way,
This
apparently
is hold on,
the fork that's attached to
wait.
this.
Let me make sure the people on YouTube can see.
Okay, but apparently
right.
the fork that's attached to this lemon or lime, it moves first, and then after it, the lime moves, even though they're both stuck together. You guys see it, the fork moving slightly first before the lime? Maybe I need to get a closer look. It moves just a little bit before the lime moves. Look. Hold on, maybe I need to get in the sunlight. Hold on.
There you go. You got to put the laser on the moon and write a paper about it. Like,
yeah, bro. It moves just a tad bit first, even though they're both stuck together.
bruh. But yeah, so for people and perfectly you guys to be able to understand the argument, we're just saying that if change occurs, pretty much if change exists, then God exists. That's the jump. But how we get there is that if change means the actualization of potential, and potential can't actualize itself. And by potential, we mean like what something could be. So for example, I think the easiest example to understand is that like you have the potential to exist, right? Or your child has the potential to exist, right? But that child cannot bring itself into actuality because that would mean that he's already actual. He's already actually existing in order to bring yourself into existence. That's a contradiction, right? So you can't be potential and actual in the same respect. So whatever goes from potential to actual is brought into actuality by something that's already actual. This leads to a chain of actualizers where this thing was brought into actuality by this thing, and this thing was brought into actuality by this thing, and so forth. And we're saying that can't go on forever. That cannot go on infinitely. But it terminates in a first. And by first, we're not talking about the beginning of time. We're not talking about the universe or the beginning of the universe or anything. We're talking about the highest in the order. Right? This first is not actualized by anything external to it because then it's changed and it's just in the same sequence of things that's changed. But this thing is purely actual. So it's not acted upon by anything else. That's how
I just came up with a better example, bro.
Ooh, drop it.
So like my finger has my nail on it, but my finger moves slightly before my nail does.
The nail get left behind a little bit.
Yeah, nail gotta catch up.
Yeah. When you walk into the room, your whole body come together. But it's not that difficult.